Thank you for joining the Joint Education and K through 12 Conference Committee meeting. We're going to start off with, we would like to strip the contents of Senate Bill 160, and we would like to then put the contents of Senate Bill 484 into that shell.
And the House accepts that.
Thank you. Next, we would like to strip the contents of Senate Bill 580. Excuse me, yes, 58. Thank you. I drew a circle around it. That made it 580. So we're going to strip the contents of Senate Bill 58 and insert the contents of Senate Bill 496. I'm sorry, yes.
All right. Thank you, Chairwoman. So we do have an amendment offer for you relating to the Parents' Bill of Rights. And Nick, if you can pass that out.
Well, since we're talking right now about putting the contents of Senate Bill 496 into Senate Bill 58, Senate Bill 496 is the Parents' Bill of Rights that was passed by the Senate.
So it looks like a lot, but it's really not, because there's a lot of language that has been stricken. And so I'm going to briefly go over it. There's two main components to this. The first one, for Parents' Bill of Rights, it does include a much reduced parent portal. The Senate version gives parents the right to inspect materials, which is great, but it puts parents in the position that they need to make that email, they need to make that phone call. And in the past 3 to 4 years, the legislature has consistently added more transparency provisions to all areas. And I want to cite some examples real quick. For Department of Commerce, we added the Kansas Transparency Portal that required the incentives, economic incentives, to be easily located on a database. So you could look up your county, you could look up the incentive, you could look up the program. We have done it for community colleges with a taxpayer transparency portal so that you could go to any community college and easily find the same name in all community colleges. We've also added in 2019 the accountability reports button on the Kansas Department of Education that makes it really simple for users to find it. What I have found in my research is that if I go to different school district websites, some may have curriculums, most do not. Some may have the library digital card catalog, some do not. Some have things under a parent section, some have it in other areas. And so what this amendment does is it just requires 3 things. It's called the Parents' Transparency Portal. It would include the statute language for Parents' Bill of Rights, so parents would know what it is and it wouldn't be lost in statute. It would include learning materials as defined, but it would exclude any type of academic test, any type of lesson plan. It would exclude any IEP, student presentation. It would only include a list of materials, learning materials as defined, and those could be updated throughout the year and completed at the end of the year, unless the school had already adopted a curriculum and then that superintendent could go ahead or staff could go ahead and place it on the portal because they know they have a textbook series. They know they have a curriculum. So let's go. What does the transparency portal include? It includes the Parents' Bill of Rights. It includes the curriculum. It includes a link to the standards, and it includes a link to the card catalog system. So which one am I missing? Did I get all of those? Okay, so those are the only things that would include, which is much, much, much pared down from the House original version. And the idea is easy access for parents. Sometimes you don't know what questions to ask if you don't have access to the information, and it does make it uniform with what we're doing in commerce and areas of taxation and areas with community college. The next provision is social emotional learning. And what it's doing is it's just requiring that at least 4 months in advance, if you're going to provide a test or a questionnaire or survey to a student, that parent has access to that. It can be digital, email, and if an immediate need is required, they can use a phone call. So that means that the parent would submit an acceptable response, however that board decided. It could be a digital signature, and they would approve those surveys before the student takes them. That is the basics of, Nick, did I leave out anything? And also, again, just as a refresher and a reminder, we wanted to make sure and clarify anywhere that it mentions learning materials that we are not talking about lesson plans, we're not talking about tests, we're not talking about student IEPs. Nick, anything else?
I don't believe so, Madam Chair. You covered it very well. The only thing I would note after a brief conversation with the chairpersons, we have a definition for parent in there. But if as this balloon is currently drafted, that definition would only apply in this section 2 of the balloon. And if there is the intent to apply that definition and the definitions of activities and learning materials across section 1 as well, the Parents' Bill of Rights, we would just need to change that to be applicable to both sections. Just kind of a technical.
I would think we'd want to be consistent. If the Senate approves of those, I would want it to be consistent across all of those. So that is our recommendation for a much scaled down House version, but just a little bit cleaner and better for parents. And so we'll leave that with you.
So in looking at attachment 1 and attachment 2, would you step us through each of the sections and each of the items that not only were passed out of committee, but were passed by the House?
So as you may recall, we passed this out of our committee, but we did not take it on the floor of the House. So these are from the committee, except they are much pared down in an effort to expedite the process and to keep it closer to the intent of the Senate bill. We have only picked out the 2 areas that we felt would best mesh with your bill and create better opportunity for access to parents, which meshes completely with your bill, and also answers the questions that our constituents have been asking about, one of which has been social emotional learning.
Okay, so to be clear, when we are looking at attachment 2, was that a portion of
Yes.
what bill that passed out of committee?
Substitute House Bill 2662. And the items you see in the attachments are just reduced pieces of that. Not new language, but just capturing and reducing.
So when I'm looking at attachment 2, there's quite a bit underlined. So the items that are underlined, are those new with this attachment, or are those what originally appeared in Substitute House Bill 2662?
Nick, go ahead and answer that, please.
Yes, this is, as the chair said, this is a pared down version. So everything that's underlined was what passed out of committee. But some of the new language that was also included in the House committee bill has been removed from this attachment. But again, the underlying portions have been passed through the House K through 12 Education Budget Committee.
Okay, and when I look at attachment 1, which is section 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, B, C, 1, 2, those were all of that in attachment 1 was also in the substitute House Bill 2662.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. We will need to have time, I believe, to respond to this. I think that there was a part of the reason that the Senate bill 496 is what it is we were taking into account what we heard in numerous different sessions of hearings and testimonies, where what we heard from, because we had 2 other transparency bills that we had hearings on as well. And what seemed to be a recurring theme is while not every school district is making materials available online for parents, many school districts have put into place a system. So there is a reason that we had the language the way we did in Senate Bill 496, so that it would be adapted by the local school boards, so that those faculty members and administrators knew what was expected by that district, and it was responsive to the community. I will just say at first blush, in looking at attachment 1 and attachment 2, those are what I would refer to as being very prescriptive, not up to the local school districts and the local communities, but prescriptive as being statewide. So I am a little hesitant, though I'm not speaking for the other members of my conference committee, but I am hesitant to have something so prescriptive that has not passed either house. So that's just a first blush reaction, but I will certainly allow my other committee members, if there's something you would like to speak to or questions that you have. Senator Sykes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So on attachment 1, it's talking about that no test would be posted, but in attachment 2, it's specifying no test questionnaire or survey containing any questions about the personal beliefs or practices. Can you explain what kind of test that would be?
Yeah, so the language was changed from what was originally in statute, because that is original statute language, some of the parts that are struck out. So that's any survey. So if I were to read you a Kansas Community That Cares, it's going to ask you very personal questions. It's going to ask you about your family. It's going to ask you if anybody in your family's drank alcohol in the last month. Did anybody smoke a cigarette? Did anybody, it's going to ask that type of personal information, and rather than go through and talk about it specifically as a statute when it said religious, it's just personal information.
Okay, and I understand that, and I do believe that in statute that is currently an opt-in, but I specifically, why does it say test? And I'm just wondering if a student maybe doesn't like a particular question about history and they have different views, if this could be used as a way to get around that.
So no, because it's specifically the social emotional learning statute. It's not relevant to any academic test, and Nick can verify that.
So the key here is that under underlying law, what's in current law, it would be on issues such as sex, family life, morality, or religion, or any questions about those types of beliefs or practices. I think the tests, surveys, questionnaires, or examinations is just a broad way of saying any of those items that are asking personal questions on sex, family life, morality, or religion.
Okay, thank you.
No? Okay, so we will need to get back with you with regard to, yes, go ahead.
And the only thing I would say about these items is that, again, it's about consistency in providing access to information without the parent having to go actually formally ask for it. If they have to go formally ask for it and ask for the inspection, I don't know that we're changing anything than what is currently in practice. Secondly, as mentioned, most districts do not provide those basic items. What they do provide is like a Google Classroom where if you have a student's password, you could go in and look at it. So that's what we're trying to do, is make something very simple, very clean, that's very searchable and consistent. The other thing I would mention is that we just the House just accepted Senate Bill 160. It did not pass the House floor. And so, though this did not pass the House floor, it has been vetted in committee, and Senate Bill 160 was not. And we did accept it. So I would ask for that consideration back. Thank you.
Well, I think the only difference is the contents that we're putting into it is Senate Bill 484 that did pass the Senate floor. And when we're talking about, but not the House, but the contents you're asking us to put into Senate Bill 496 that we want to move to Senate Bill 58, the contents you're asking us to put into it have not been passed by the House. That was the only distinction I was making. So we will, Senator Sykes.
Can I ask a question of the revisers? What is our joint rule on inserting language if it has passed? Does it have to pass a House or the full House or Senate, or does it just have to pass a committee?
The joint rule states only subject matters which are or have been included in the bill or concurrent resolution in conference, or in bills or concurrent resolutions which have been passed or adopted in either one or both houses during the current biennium of the legislature, may be included in the report of the conference committee.
Okay, we will get back with you at our next meeting with regard to the parental bill of rights and your two attachments. I think, are we now wanting to move? Okay.
All right. In terms of substitute for House Bill 2567, the two remaining items, I know that we are at opposite ends in terms of the residency on the Promise Act. We don't have a resolution for that at this moment. I think both chambers are firmly set on their point, but we do have a clarification that may be helpful for the item which was related to House Bill 2747. Instead of saying "and other programs," the language would be changed to "and other bachelor's, master's, or PhD programs." So it would not relate to associate's degrees. And that would be our offer back on 2567.
And could you read that again? You said "and other bachelor's, master's,
And PhD programs.
and could the revisers, just to make sure, House Bill 2747, was there a hearing? Was that bill passed out or voted on by either body? It was not. Okay, thank you. There was that one. There is actually another discussion item that we do need to address. Actually, two things that I would like us to speak to with regard to the contents of substitute for House Bill 2512. One of them has to do with regard to the math program. Last night, when Appropriations and Ways and Means were meeting, it's my understanding that they took many items um, that were being considered for SGF funding, and they moved them out from SGF funding, out from under that funding into Spark funding. And so I think it would be helpful if either JG from research, legislative research, or if our revisers could check into that, because when I look at what the intent is with regard to the statewide math program, it certainly is to address learning delays. And we all know that there's been significant impact due to COVID. And it was our understanding when we first discussed, I believe it was on Monday, about the statewide math program, the funding for it is just a 1-year funding. And I know that we have talked that the notion of having a multi-year funding would be more optimal. Also feel like in an RFP process, we might be able to get a better price if it's for a 2-year agreement. But I do want us to, if there is an opportunity for Spark funding for 2 years for a statewide math program, I think that helps everyone across the state to, one, address that, two, find out, are we experiencing testing increases as many of these virtual programs indicate they will help provide? So I think that that is a stone I want us to turn over and see if that's an opportunity for us, rather than it be essentially SGF that's cycling back from school districts for the first 2 years. The other thing is, after we had our last meeting yesterday, I received, and I think other committee members received, a flurry of text messages that was there an agreement with regard to whether it is level 1 or level 1 and 2, because I know that the Senate position was level 1, the House position is level 1 and 2, and I don't think that we talked about it and asked questions about it, I know, on Monday. We did not directly speak to that yesterday, and I think that we are going to need to, at least our side is going to need to discuss that and come back to make a clarification statement, because we have not as of yet. You may.
Thank you, Senator. The one thing we should note on that as committee members, if it goes back to level 1, that is not proficient. And it could create confusion in terminology that is used at the federal level, which does use the word proficiency. So in a series of correspondence and looking at the language that's provided, I think it would be problematic to call level 2 proficient. Doing math at a basic level or reading at a basic level is not proficiency. It's basic level. And so just something to keep in mind as you're evaluating that particular item.
And my response would be, that is an issue that we wrestled with in committee, and we asked quite specifically, what does the State Board of Education consider not proficient? And we were told it's level 1, while never level 2 puts them, and this is where it gets interesting, because when we're talking about this assessment leveling, what we have heard repeatedly from the education commissioner is those levels are whether or not a child is college ready. And quite frankly, though, I think we all agree that 3rd graders absolutely need to be able to read before they move forward. I don't think a third grader being able to read at third grade level is a mark that they're college ready. Having taught many college courses, a third grader that reads at third grade level would not be able to read the textbooks that we use at the college level. But we know that not being able to read at the third grade level by third grade is, through research, an indicator that their path moving forward in education will be significantly marred. So I think part of our problem, as we as legislators continue to try and work toward accountability, and making meaningful decisions based on state assessments, because it is a standardized assessment. We continue to wrangle back and forth with the Department of Education, which puts, unfortunately, our elected state board of education members in a crosshairs as to what those levels truly mean. So we will go back and revisit that. We do share the concern, because in the end, I think all of us have that same focus. We want children in the state of Kansas to move forward in their learning process and to be successful when they graduate from high school. And I will circle back to the most recent legislative post audit that came out, and that's on remediation. And what is really telling about that is what we have heard. This is teachers responding that we should not move children forward to the next grade level, to the next course level, if they've not demonstrated mastery. That's coming from school teachers in our public schools. So, and I think that was like 70 plus percent of teachers responded that they felt that was what has contributed to children needing remediation when they graduate from high school, is because they've been moved forward from a math 1 to a math 2, college algebra, keep moving forward even though they've not demonstrated mastery of that level. So I find that as a positive that teachers recognize it. We've got to figure out how to break that cycle. And I do feel that with the reading program, as well as the assistance with a statewide math program, that I am hopeful would contribute to us helping break that cycle. So we will be back with that discussion.
All right. Thank you, Senator. On that note, I will try to find those emails from Kansas Department of Education that identify 1 and 2 as proficient. In addition, I would also add that when we're talking about that, it's for the needs assessment. And I'm afraid that if our local school boards are only looking at level 1, they're going to miss another group of students that are below the median. They are falling more to the lower end, and we don't want that. And so from our perspective, it's give those local boards maximum amount of information and keep it consistent with what the terminology is certainly at the federal. Just a quick side note on that. One of our electricians in our town is also a mayor, and he said, look, these kids know their social emotional learning, but I haven't found one in the last 5 years that can read a ruler. So we really got to step it up. Madam Chair.
Yes, we do. Rulers are important. Just ask any builder. I think with that, so we have agreement on the 1 bill. And so you will prepare the paperwork for us to sign on that, and we will set up a time that we can meet again. Do you have other meetings? I know that do you have another committee meeting? No? Okay. All right. So we will get that and we will move forward. Thank you so much.